Let us explore a deeply uncomfortable but profoundly necessary question. Are we unconsciously driving away the most kind and loving people in our lives? At first glance, this concept might sound entirely counterintuitive. Why on earth would anyone willingly push away good people? We are naturally drawn to those who radiate warmth, empathy, and unconditional love, actively seeking them out to serve as our anchors in a chaotic world. Yet, the tragic irony of human behavior is that we often end up punishing the very people who offer us the most grace. When we look closely at our daily emotional patterns, a sobering reality emerges. The safety provided by unconditional love often makes it the easiest target for our unresolved pain. We do not intend to be cruel, but our lack of emotional awareness can slowly transform us into the architects of our own profound loneliness. To truly understand this dynamic, let us consider a hypothetical thought experiment about a man named Mark. Like so many people navigating the modern American dream, Mark is carrying a crushing weight of responsibilities. He wakes up every day, endures a grueling commute, and walks into a toxic workplace where his boss constantly undermines him and his colleagues throw him under the bus. Because Mark is trapped by a heavy mortgage and the fear of unemployment, he swallows his pride. He smiles through the disrespect, suppresses his immense frustration, and physically absorbs the stress. However, that toxic energy does not simply vanish, it demands an outlet. Without realizing it, Mark begins practicing emotional displacement. He subconsciously redirects his suppressed anger and exhaustion toward the people he knows will not fire him or retaliate, his loving family and his kindest, most patient friends. In his flawed subconscious logic, he feels safe lashing out at them because their love acts as a protective buffer, allowing him to vent his darkness without facing immediate, devastating consequences. The tragedy of Mark's situation is that this unconscious habit operates like a slow-acting poison on his most valuable relationships. When you consistently project your unhealed trauma and daily frustrations onto kind and gentle people, you rarely encounter a dramatic, theatrical explosion. Instead, kind-hearted people tend to process pain internally. They simply absorb the shock, offer forgiveness, and try to understand your stress. But over time, the emotional toll becomes unbearable, and because they abhor conflict, they do not fight back, they just quietly fade away. His friends stop calling, and the loved ones living under his own roof build invisible walls of emotional distance to protect themselves. Mark eventually wakes up to a chilling, empty silence, completely baffled as to why he is so alone. He failed to realize that while love might be unconditional, a person's capacity to endure a toxic environment is not. People naturally grow where the light is, and they will inevitably retreat from a space that has become nothing but an emotional dumping ground. This dynamic is not just a theoretical concept. It plays out in real living rooms and kitchens every single day. Not long ago, I received a late-night text from a younger friend asking to meet at a local diner, a highly unusual request that immediately signaled a crisis. When I arrived, I found him sitting in a booth, his eyes swollen from crying, utterly shattered because his wife had just packed her bags and left him. He was in a state of complete shock, desperately defending himself by explaining how hard he worked, how many sacrifices he made, and how he believed he was fulfilling his role as a great provider. But his wife's parting words revealed a different truth. She was simply hollowed out by his relentless negativity. When I gently pressed him about whether there had been any warning signs, the memories suddenly rushed back to him. He remembered her pleading, "I am not your emotional trash can," and he recalled nights where, instead of arguing with his bitter complaints about the house, she simply retreated to the bedroom and wept in silence. He had entirely missed the fact that his financial provision was being completely overshadowed by his emotional taxation. When confronted with this harsh reality, my friend immediately deployed the most common defense mechanism. He justified his behavior by citing his own suffering. He argued that the immense pressure he was under gave him a pass for his sharp tongue and heavy moods. But this is the crucial turning point where true emotional maturity must begin. Being in pain does not grant you the right to inflict pain on the innocent people who love you. I had to ask him a difficult question. You wouldn't dare speak to your boss or a stranger on the street the way you speak to your wife, would you? The uncomfortable truth is that we often behave at our absolute worst with the people who love us the most, simply because it is safe. We use our stress as a shield to justify cowardly emotional behavior. Recognizing this is a brutal but necessary step toward true healing and accountability, because the alternative is living in an isolated world, surrounded only by people you are too afraid to confront. Fortunately, taking radical responsibility can rewrite the end of the story. Once my friend stopped defending his destructive coping mechanisms and touched the raw truth of his own behavior, everything shifted. He approached his wife not with excuses about his stressful job, but with a profound, vulnerable apology for using her as an emotional punching bag. Because he finally acknowledged her invisible pain, she found the grace to accept his apology, leading to a powerful, tearful reconciliation that marked the beginning of a much healthier chapter. They are now actively doing the hard work of building self-awareness, and while he still faces immense stress at work, he is learning to intercept his frustration before it walks through his front door. Protecting the kind and loving people in our lives requires us to develop healthier, solitary ways to process our external battles. We must become fiercely protective of our safe harbors, ensuring that the people who offer us unconditional love receive our absolute best, rather than the leftover wreckage of our worst days. Let us slow down for a moment and treat this conversation as if we were just two friends sitting on the front porch as the sun dips below the horizon, sharing a warm cup of coffee and the raw, unfiltered realities of life. There is no grand philosophical framework or complex psychological theory here today, just the simple, undeniable truths that bind our shared human experiences together. Looking back at my friend's journey, I am struck by the profound emotional arc that we both experienced. When we first sat down together, the air was heavy with an overwhelming sense of sadness and the devastating weight of impending loss. But as his story unfolded, and as he made the brave choice to step into a space of absolute vulnerability with his wife, that heavy burden slowly began to lift. Hearing about the moment they finally held each other, shedding tears and releasing years of unspoken, built-up tension, brought an immense sense of joy and relief to my own heart. It served as a beautiful, living reminder that even when we veer completely off course and damage the things we hold dear, the compass of genuine love and honest communication can still guide us back to solid ground. This entire experience illuminated a universal truth that we so often forget in our relentless, modern pursuit of perfection. Life is inherently designed around our mistakes. Every single one of us is fundamentally flawed, stumbling through the dark and occasionally stepping on the toes of the very people walking beside us. The true beauty of the human experience does not lie in a flawless track record or a sterile life lived without causing any friction. Rather, it is found in the breathtaking sincerity and courage with which we face our failures. When we actively choose to look our missteps in the eye, absorb the painful lessons they offer, and commit to growing into better, more empathetic versions of ourselves, we turn our deepest regrets into our greatest stepping stones. It is the recovery, the heartfelt apology, and the sustained change in our daily behavior that truly define our character, proving that we are not forever bound by our worst moments, but rather empowered by the wisdom they inevitably provide. I share this deeply personal narrative not as an absolute scientific blueprint for every relationship, but as a gentle, reflective mirror for your own life. Because every individual's journey is a unique tapestry of different struggles, environments, and triumphs. The lessons here might not map perfectly onto your current reality, and that is completely okay. My deepest hope is that you find even a tiny spark of resonance in these words, a quiet reassurance that it is never too late to pivot, to apologize, and to fiercely protect the unconditional love that surrounds you in whatever form it takes. I encourage you to take these reflections, let them sit with you tonight without any judgment, and allow yourself the grace to be wonderfully, imperfectly human. May you find profound peace in your reflections, renewed strength in your ongoing growth. This is all I want to share with you in this video. Hope you enjoy, and don't forget to subscribe and comment your thought.